Sometimes when I'm thinking about us, before we got lost and we parted, back to back we would carry on and we'd do anything for what we started. But this time we could break. I'm running dry, everything's the same. We'll try tonight, this time we're not safe and sound. Not safe and sound. What if I'm no good for you? What if you're no good for me? Yeah. What if I'm no good for you? What if you're no good for me? Yeah. Sometimes when I'm reasoning about us, I know you got me, it's so effortless. Back to back we would carry on and we'd do anything for what we started. But this time we could break. I'm running dry, everything's the same. We'll try tonight, this time we're not safe and sound. Not safe and sound. What if I'm no good for you? What if you're no good for me? Yeah. What if I'm no good for you? What if you're no good for me? Yeah. What if I'm no good for you? What if you're no good for me? Yeah. What if I'm no good for you? What if you're no good for me? What if I'm no good for you? What if you're no good for me? What if I'm no good for you? What if you're no good for me? What if I'm no good for you? What if you're no good for me? What if I'm no good for you? What if you're no good for me? What if I'm no good for you? What if you're no good for me?
Welcome everybody to the FPV news with JB and ItsBlunty. We stepped up our graphics. What do you think, Blunty?
It's good, man. It's good.
Thanks to
Fancy.
Mo. Thanks to Mo in the Discord for making that. I don't know what we did do with it, but oh yeah, maybe we'll do a new intro graphic. I like that broken arm.
Yeah.
Jory says, I used to be here for Henry, but now I'm here for the spinning graphics. Okay, let's get serious because the news must be serious at all times. Serious and sober. What would Walter Cronkite say? Thank you guys for...
know.
Yeah, me too. I just know him by name. Dan Rather? I believe
Not really.
he's also dead.
Yeah.
Is he dead or just retired? Well, anyway.
I'm not
You know
sure.
who's not dead is us.
That's true.
Just crossed.
Evidenced by us being
Right. Being here to bring you all the news, the FPV news. We've got some hot topics this week, Blunty. For once, we will not be starting the stream with information about DJI.
It's true.
No, it's traditional. We'll
Yeah,
be talking
don't
about
hold your breath.
HDZero.
Might happen again next week, but for now, we're gonna open with some different kind of news.
Yeah, HDZero released a new camera. We're going to talk about the demand for it was, let's tease them. It was either much higher or much lower than expected. Don't worry, you won't have to wait long to find out. It's our first story.
True. We're also going to look at the original DJI cam is back. We talked about rumors about that last week and some questions about where it came from. But it looks like we have confirmation on those sensors being in stock, and we'll talk a little more about sources on that in a little bit.
And surprise, surprise, it turns out that I was, this trend of me saying, well, what I'm hearing is blah, or such and such is not going to happen. And then manufacturers do it just to prove me wrong. Well, it happened again. We'll talk more about that. DJI Osmo Action 2, the hope for replacement for the GoPro Hero Session. It's confirmed to exist thanks to a leak from Peter McKinnon. We've got another potential leak, not a leak maybe, but a potential date for when we might be seeing it. So we will talk about that as well. But before we get into the news, let me just thank you guys. Thank you guys for showing up here in the chat. We will be reading the chat, and also thanks to the folks over in the Discord, my patrons in the Discord. We'll be keeping up with you guys as well. And if you guys want to leave a super chat, feel free. Although we will not be reading super chats, we'll read them at the end of the show. We're going to focus on the news. And first up, Blunty, a Shark Byte camera sold out in minutes.
Yeah, at least part of the release did. We'll see how the next one goes. But yeah, today saw the release of the Runcam Micro HDZero finally for release that people have been asking about for a while. Those came out at 12 p.m. EDT, and they sold out today in about 3 minutes that I clocked it.
Yeah. You told me, hey, they're going to be on sale at noon. I looked at the clock and it was 12:03, and I clicked through to look at the webpage and it was sold out. And I was like, did they not release them, or am I late? I was late.
Yeah. So, that being said, they are releasing, it looks like 800 more, 200 batches, 200 piece batches over the next, it looks like 3 or 4 days. There was talk about doing like an Australian, like a late night release for people in other regions.
Yeah, good point. Good point.
200 might go there, and then we should see the rest of them come. Apparently, it'll be 12 p.m. EDT tomorrow. So, if you're not in the HDZero Discord or HDZero Facebook group, both of those exist. You can search those, and they'll get you up with that info as well. But, yeah, pretty exciting to see the camera sell out in 3 minutes. There were two per person. We don't know how many orders were actually made, but it's looking promising. I'm interested to see what happens with the next releases and how fast these sell out.
Yeah, I mean, it was at least 100 orders, between 100 and 200 orders. I think that this is a great indicator of the size of the Shark Byte user base, and more importantly, the demand for Shark Byte equipment. That so they just did the promotion where they were selling the receiver module for $99, and then some stores marked it back up to $250, and now it's at $150. So it seems like they're trying to find a price point that moves it, which hopefully still covers their costs. And with these cameras selling out this fast, you really have to wonder. Like Ryan Quellet's a Shark Byte beta tester and an all-around smart guy, and he's talking in the chat about how hard it's been to get manufacturers to make Shark Byte cameras. And of course, we can all point to the Runcam Nano. We could point to the Foxeer Digisite. Even Runcam Mippy, I think, was there no.
Yeah,
well, anyway, they've made a few.
The Apollo's about to come out as well. It's Shark Byte.
Foxeer.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the camera that Foxeer is making, the exact same camera for DJI and Shark Byte. And Ryan says in the chat, well, I don't know if this is true, but he says in the chat that they weren't going to do a Shark Byte version until users pressured them. So...
Right. But I mean, that's what I would expect. Like if you're a camera manufacturer, like how many do you need to do in a batch? Like how big a batch runs do you need to be to make a reasonable amount of money on the runs? How many thousands do you need to do? And then where do you see that evidence of sales? So I think this whole even though it's a trickle release, I think this will prove a lot to manufacturers who want to jump in the game. Like if they see these instant sales over and over again, then it becomes a thing like, oh, we need to do this because a good camera sold really well. I think that's the way I'm looking at this. I don't know the back end or who's talking to who or whatever. We only get to see what we see. So.
Yeah, and this goes back to what One Eye FPV says in the Discord. What's the point of this slow drip? You have to be on time with the release of cameras that sell out in minutes. Why not just do pre-orders and limit the quantity per customer? And I can tell you one reason is that if you open a pre-order, then instead of selling out in 3 minutes, they'll sell out in 12 minutes, and then you'll still be sold out.
And then,
Right.
but the difference is the guy who finds out in 12 hours won't get another chance.
Exactly.
So like that's the whole point of this, is so that people get a chance. So like when the whole rush happens and everybody freaks out because they sold out in 3 minutes, now everybody knows about it and everybody's hearing about it, and they're like, oh, there's going to be more releases and I can try this day or this day or this day. If you do pre-orders, they all 1,000 sell out in 12 minutes. Now people are mad with a reason. Now nobody got the camera because, oh, only these people heard about it or only got posted here or whatever.
Right.
There's no excuses when you trickle.
If you trickle them like this and you miss the first day, you get 4 more chances. And hey, if you don't make it, that's on you, or you just got unlucky. But I think there's a marketing side, which is because if they released 1,200 cameras and they sold out in 10 minutes, they'll be like, yeah, okay. I mean, it would be notable, but they're going to sell out 200 cameras in 3 minutes today. Tomorrow, they'll probably do it again, and it's going to make a splash. It's going to make, hopefully, manufacturers and certainly people like us take note that there is a real demand.
Also, you build, I think, like you're saying, you build demand through this. So like the people bothering Foxeer for Apollos are only going to be bothering people more, bothering Runcam or whoever more to get more of these Micro HDZeros or more cameras that they can use when the 1,000 are gone. They're going to be like, where's the next batch? Give me the next batch. They're reaching out to whoever, when they see new cameras.
I mean, 1,000 is a small batch for Runcam. I don't have internal knowledge, but I think, based on some information, that a typical order is in the, say, 20 or 30,000 range. I can tell you this. Here's what I know. When we made the JB Micro Eagle, it had a special sensor from Sony, and it had a huge MOQ. It was like 25 or 35,000 sensors that you had to order. And so obviously Runcam made 25 or 35,000 of that camera because that was the only camera that had that sensor in it. And when they ran through that first batch, which granted took a long time, but when they ran through that batch, they said, hey, we got to do another order, and we're not sure we're going to re-up the camera because we don't know if it's worth it to make that many. Now, that was a really popular camera, but 1,000 cameras is nothing. I bet you right now, Runcam's having a meeting about we got to make more of this camera.
Yeah, Ryan said in the chat a little bit above that, we're not privy to this, but he was saying that Runcam wouldn't produce the Micro HD, so Carl had to pay. If that's true, then this will be proof to Runcam, and they'll make a bunch more.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And there's a lot to be said about Shark Byte and its image quality, but certainly I feel like the Foxeer DigiSight, I'm working on a review of it. It's not bad. I feel like there has yet to be like a knock your socks off camera for Shark Byte. Like the Eagle was for, or maybe the Foxeer Predator. Anyway, congratulations to Shark Byte. Congratulations to anybody who got the camera. I'm going to be releasing a video comparing the Foxeer DigiSight and this camera. Ryan Quellet sent me this camera weeks ago, and I took it out of the envelope. I set it down somewhere, and then when I went to put it, I wanted to put it in my 250. I couldn't find it. And recently I was cleaning my bench, and I'm like, oh, a Runcam box. He sent it to me. It was just in a nondescript Runcam box, and I just set it down, and I was just like, oh, I forgot that it wasn't just another Runcam camera. I couldn't find it. But now I found it. So, awesome.
So, speaking of Shark Byte, HDZero, it looks, it's pretty exciting. It looks like they've been approved for use at MultiGP Nationals at Championships this year. So any of the racers who want to use it, the testing's been done, timing's been set up and everything, and you can race Shark Byte if you'd like to do that. It sounds like rumors are that a bunch of the guys are going to be racing Shark Byte and kind of competing to see, who's doing the best out of the Shark Byte guys. And rumors are Evan Turner will be on Shark Byte, but we'll see if that happens. If
that's true, that's astounding. I mean, that's like there's nothing. Here's the thing. Freestyle has a sort of a culture, a sort of a rock star culture, where people have their favorite pilots and they want to emulate them and they want to buy their motors and their gear. But it's sort of more about personality than about, I mean, obviously these pilots have skill, but the thing with racing is either you won or you didn't. And if a winning racer is using your gear, that speaks to the gear in a way that freestyle can't, because it's objective. If Evan takes Shark Byte to nationals and wins,
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I know he was teasing Shark Byte versions of his frames and stuff on Facebook. I saw as well, so I know he's at least getting into it and doing some of that. And like I said, there's a word going around that there's a bunch of guys who are going to do it and then all compete against each other and stuff and see how it works. So sounds pretty good.
To take such a risk, like the pressure to win Nats is so high, if not for the prizes, but just for the prestige. I mean, racers, you know how racers are, right? You could have a tiny whoop race over lunch with a hot dog as a prize, and they will go 90% as hard as they would at Nats just because it's in their blood to compete. If he's going to take a risk by using this gear, I mean, he must think there's an advantage. He's not doing it just like on a lark.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. I would absolutely agree with that. So, wow. Pretty exciting.
Scott Walker and Bobby Baggs in the chat are saying that Evan confirmed it on Get FPV's podcast. He will be racing. That's a news item in and of itself. Evan Turner to race Shark Byte HDZero at Nats. That's massive.
Yeah, that's super exciting. Hopefully everything works out. It's really good. All that stuff.
Yeah, hopefully he's tested the crap out of it. Like, I mean, surely he has. He wouldn't just be like, yeah, I guess I'm going to Nats. It's not like it's a little regional race where you can screw around.
I mean, like I said, I think he's been working on frames and stuff, so I'm sure he's been flying a bunch of it.
Yeah. Mike Bergman on a lark, not a LARP. Alrighty. Well, that's enough about Shark Byte. I'm tired of saying nice things about Shark Byte because I am a DJI shill, and I'm only. It's like a PG-13 movie where you get like one use of the F word. DJI only lets me say nice things about Shark Byte twice a week, and now we just used them, and I don't want to lose that paycheck. So let's move on. Let's talk about Betaflight.
All right. So something you should know if you're running Betaflight 4.3, there was basically a split in the firmware. And essentially, if you're running Betaflight 4.3, there's an earlier version and a later version. So that split happens in the configurator and the flight version. So you need to have them matched. So if you're running older 4.3 nightlies, you need to run older 10.8 nightlies. And if you're running newer 4.3 nightlies, you need to run newer 10.8 nightlies. And this is because of a change for the sliders, I believe, is the main reason.
Mm-hmm. So is this the version number at which there was a split?
No, the problem is I was not able to identify, and he doesn't say in the post what the version number is for the split. There's a date on the post, so you can kind of try to go back to the nightly from that date. But other than that, that's what we got.
And so there's a couple places where this pops up, and one is obviously if you are running a nightly build of 4.3, like let's say you're running, Mark Spatz has put out a build that he's vetted and he says this is pretty bug free and safe to use. So let's say you're running that nightly build, and then for some reason you go, I need to install the configurator on my new computer. So you download the 10.8 configurator and you download the latest one on your new laptop. Well, now that's not compatible with the firmware that's on your quads anymore. It also goes the other way. There are manufacturers, a few of them right now, who are shipping their flight controllers with a nightly build of 4.3 on them.
Yes.
And you don't know whether that needs to be used with the new configurator or the old one, but presumably it's the old one. And what happens if you mix them up, Blunty? Like your quad explodes? What happens?
I don't think your quad explodes. I think it just writes the wrong config settings, but I don't know that like it's known exactly what conflicts they'll have.
It screws up your PIDs.
Yeah, they changed some of the sliders for PIDs, so I assume it will just write the wrong info to the PIDs.
Okay.
So yeah, there were enough changes where Chris Thompson felt like he needed to reach out and say like, hey, don't mix these. So
well, if they would just release the damn thing, then we wouldn't have this problem, Chris Thompson. But I understand that you're a very busy man. Though I think the safest thing to do right now is if you download a new configurator or if you download a new version of Betaflight 4.3, you should do that together. If you have working stuff, and if you buy a new bind and fly or a flight controller that for some reason comes with a nightly 4.3, you don't want to use it with the newest configurator, or you want to update to a recent nightly.
Just a reminder that also includes CLI dumps and diffs and stuff.
Correct. The CLI dumps are no longer cross-compatible between this demarcation line, which we don't know what date. We know the date that he put this out.
I was going to say, if I needed to do this, I would go to like October 1st to go before it, and I would go to like October 5th to go after it, and just like shoot around the date, you know.
Yeah,
So.
makes sense. Okay. Bless me, excuse me. Chris says all 4.3 testers should upgrade to the latest nightly versions of both firmware and configurator. So basically, he's saying stop using the old stuff at all.
Yes.
So
I would just say, like, some of the manufacturer specific stuff, it may be hard to make sure you're doing it correctly, and if you can't copy the CLIs over, that's a concern. Like, a lot of times with a specific board with a fancy target that's special, you want to do a dump and then have that, and then to not be able to paste that directly, it can be a little confusing. So just make sure you know what you're doing there.
Yeah, okay. Well, these are the perils of using nightly builds, and I'm sure folks like Mark Spatz will get us sorted out in no time. Or the Betaflight devs could just release an RC, you know, if they wanted to. We got one more quick piece of news about Betaflight. Have you ever, and I've noticed this, Blunty, but it apparently has gotten worse in Configurator 10.7.1. When you go to install Betaflight Configurator, or I've noticed this with other, like EmuFlight Configurator did it for me too. It's something common with them, where as they're installing, there's this long pause as it goes. I don't know what it's doing. It just freezes up for like 2 minutes and then finishes, and you just wait it out. Betaflight has apparently acknowledged this as a bug in 10.7.1. It got worse, and they're gonna fix it in Configurator 10.8, which is not released yet.
Yeah,
so,
it looks like he's basically saying what happens is, like, when you install Configurator, there's a node modules folder in the configurator file, and that node modules folder has a ton of stuff inside of it. So the installer goes through and extracts and looks at every single one of those folders, and it takes forever to do that. So if you delete them beforehand, if you uninstall your configurator and then you install 10.7.1, you shouldn't have this issue, because there's nothing for it to dig through in those node modules folder.
Gotcha. So if you need to install 10.7.1, just uninstall your old configurator first. It's not like there's any user data that you're going to lose by doing the uninstall.
Yes.
Just, okay. All right. Or wait for 10.8, whenever that comes. All right. We just wanted to put that in. It's not really newsworthy per se. We just wanted to put it in as a public service announcement for the people who depend on us for all their FPV related information.
Yeah.
All right.
All right.
Frenzy Incarnate in the chat asks, did you guys cover the news about the Foxier Apollo? I don't know any specific news about that camera. If you've got something to submit, Frenzy Incarnate, email news@fpvknowitall.com and let us know we should be talking about that. I mean, we know
we did bring
exists.
it up. Yeah, we did bring it up on the last show and looked a little bit at it. But yeah, we'll talk about it again probably when it's released, maybe.
Okay. So. All right. What's next, Blunty?
All right. So the original DJI FPV cam is back. Finally, the thing that we thought would never come back, and then we thought came back, but was only like models that were coming back from B&F manufacturers, because that's what we were told. Now, they're all back. They're back.
Yeah. And can I point out that this post was made like 45 minutes before I posted my video. And in case you forget, the title of the video was, "This might be your last chance ever to get the original DJI camera." And that was based on statements from some stores saying that they had gotten these cameras from DJI as like a return. Manufacturers had bought them to put them into bind and flies and then not used them, which sort of, I was like, how is that even possible? And I was like, okay, so like they found a pallet full of Vistas in the back of a warehouse somewhere. I was like, this could be it. They're not making them anymore. And then Caddx was like, well, actually, we're making them.
Yeah, you guys asked, they basically are like, hey, we've been paying attention. You guys asked a lot. We know you want the DJI cam and the Nebula Pro cam back, so we're bringing the DJI cam back.
Yeah. So, and in fact, I am now hearing from those same sources that these, in fact, are made by Caddx. And they are not, they're not the old DJI cams that were found in the back of a warehouse somewhere and released. These are new manufacturing. Caddx is supposedly making them to DJI specs. Sorry, you were going to say.
I just want to see them popped open and see like what it looks like in there.
Yes.
And then see if that's true or not. Because I don't know. I'm 50-50 on whether that's possible or not. I don't know. It's interesting. I mean, they could certainly pass off manufacturing, and Caddx knows how to make a camera.
They do.
But they were originally out of DJI, so it's interesting to see DJI pass something off like that. Because as far as we know, everything else is still made at DJI. So it's it does seem a little weird for them to pass it off, but maybe they don't want to do it anymore.
I mean, they passed off camera manufacturing already, right? The original camera was made by DJI, then the Nebula series from Caddx, etc.
Yeah, but my way of looking at that is like DJI kept making the DJI cam. Caddx started making the Caddx cams. So like the break was like, DJI always made the DJI cams. Caddx always made the Caddx cams. So it's interesting to see them pass that off. But yeah, well, I want to see it popped open and see what's in there.
Well, apparently Madstech is going to do it.
Yes.
Madstech, Bobby Baggs reminding us. Madstech is going to do it as soon as he gets one. I'll be very interested. I mean, if all they had done was take a Nebula Pro and stuff it in the old case, then the Nebula Pro is a solid camera, and I would consider it to be an acceptable substitute for the original DJI cam. But my thing is, the DJI cam is 20.5 millimeters wide. A standard micro cam is 19 millimeters wide, and that means that it doesn't fit easily in many frames. If it wasn't the original DJI cam, why would they put it in this stupid case?
Right. Yeah, I would definitely say, like Sam says in the Discord, if it's a Neb Pro, sell us a Neb Pro.
Exactly.
The other thing, John says, and this makes a lot of, I am on the same page here. I wonder if they're dual board like the OG camera. Like DJI's camera was different than all the other cameras because it was like a dual board and it had an internal snap connector thing, and it was quite different than we've seen. Like the sensor board was a different piece. So yeah, I'm just interested to see what they come up with and what they come out with. Hopefully for the original cams with the same sensor specs and all that, and we'll be nice and happy.
Yeah, I'll be happy. I mean, Nebula Pro is okay, but the OG is the OG.
Yeah.
So, alrighty. Well, thanks, Caddx. I'm just going to own it. Like, I researched, I had statements, and I reported the statements as, I was told blah, right? That's what I'm being told. So, I mean, there's no need to issue a retraction. It is annoying when you put a video out and, like, just as you release the video, somebody proves you wrong. But I'm just going to start taking credit that they did it just to make me look bad. And so I brought back the Caddx camera, the DJI camera. I did it. In fact, I made DJI a thing at all by saying that digital HD not going to happen. And then like 9 months later, DJI releases it. They're like, we'll show him. Y'all should be thanking me instead of saying, gee, Bardwell.
I will say as well, never mind, let's move on.
Okay. Well, we got another piece of DJI related news. The DJI Osmo Action 2, the hopeful successor of the Caddx, the Runcam. I got nothing. The GoPro Hero 5 session.
Yes.
DJI has released this image with 3 dates, 20th, 27th, and November 5th. And people are guessing that one of these is the Osmo Action.
Yeah, the assumption right now with the dates that were already previewed and the leaks and other things that we're looking around is that the first one is either a Ronin Pro or an Osmo Pocket 3.
Okay.
I haven't really seen that confirmed, which one that is. That's kind of the tenuous one. The second one, because of the connector in the center, is going to be the Action 2, because the Action 2 has that connector to each thing bit, right? And the date matches up to the pre-leaked dates. And then the last one will be the Mavic 3, because it matches like what the batteries look like on the Mavic 3 from what we know. And the date was supposed to be in November. So that's the tentative rumors.
That's plausible. I mean, we know that the Osmo Action 2 is a 2-piece unit with like a separate screen that comes off of it. And that does look like the connector from the leaks. So we're hoping for October 27th, and we'll see if that turns out to be true.
Yeah.
DJI will never do a fixed latency race mode. Not going to happen.
Never.
Not. It's
Mark
impossible.
His words.
They couldn't.
Joshua's words.
It's not possible. They couldn't do it. Okay.
They don't have the guts.
It would be too expensive, Blunty. They'd have to redo their whole ASIC. Nah, they couldn't do it. Okay. Next up, Blunty, we're going to shift gears and talk about the Hobbymate D6 Duo Pro. And the reason we're talking about, by the way, I own 4 of these. This is my favorite charger today. In fact, every time new chargers come out, I go, well, how does it stack up to the Hobbymate? Well, they're still supporting it. And they've just released a firmware with a new feature.
Yeah, so I'm kind of interested to know how if you would use this. This is kind of interesting, but basically this adds a function called sync charge. So previously each channel had 15 amps max charge rating, and this changes it so that you can hook a Y connector up to both of your XTs and get 22 amps out of both combined.
Yeah, and that's cool. And I know there will be people who use it. Well, let's think about that. Like, who is going to use this? Because I was about to say people who parallel charge. Whenever I think of high amp charging, I think of parallel charging because you have a bunch of batteries. And so you're only charging at 1C, but you're charging 10 or 15 batteries at a time. But if you have this charger and you could do 15 amps per channel, you wouldn't parallel charge in sync mode. You would do 2 sides, right? Why would you make 2 separate parallel? Why would you combine them into one parallel board? So that's not the application. Who's going to use 22 amps of charging?
I don't know. I was thinking about the same thing you were. Like, I started to go through this and I was like, it seems neat, but I'm just not sure, who exactly this is for. It is cool to see them continually supporting their product, though, for sure.
I have those big Rely-On batteries. Those things you could charge at like 20 amps. Like, I charge them at 15 amps, and that's not even 1C, I don't think. But that's just the most the charger would do. I mean, not like I'm in a particular hurry to charge that battery, but that's the kind of battery you would want to charge at like 20 amps. But if you want it, it's here. It doesn't cost you anything, just a firmware update. Dan Z says people with large lipos for cinelifters. That's the, I mean, we're talking about a 22,000 milliamp hour pack to charge at 1C. It's a giant battery.
Yeah, so one other thing to note here, though, is that does seem to reintroduce an old bug. There was an old bug in the firmware that forced the fan to run all the time. And it just seemed like installing this brings that bug back. So if that annoys you,
bummer,
then you don't want this.
And you were saying before the show that there's actually a recommended firmware version to be on, because on older firmwares there was a bug that would like blow the channel.
Yeah, it was only with discharging. And I couldn't confirm which version it was because I think they pulled all those down. But it was an older version of the firmware where if you were doing a discharge cycle through the Hobbymate, it could, like, I guess, overamp and then cause a fire or issue or destroy the charger. So the recommendation is to go to 1.0.35. I don't know if some of the earlier ones have fixed that bug. I presume all the ones on their site have. However, if you've never updated your Hobbymate, you may have an older firmware that could be susceptible to the bug. Okay,
so it's a public service announcement. If you are never updated your firmware, you should immediately update to 1.0.3.5 because there's a bug that rarely, when discharging, causes it to be damaged. And if you want the sync charge, go up to 1.0.4.0, but you will reintroduce the bug where the fan runs at 100% all the time.
Yes.
There's a question. There's a question where One Eye FPV in the Discord says, how do you update them? It is via the USB port, One Eye. There's on Hobbymate's website, there is instructions for how to update it, but there's an app you download that flashes it, basically. Go ahead, Blunty.
All right. No, that's pretty much it. So yeah. Hopefully that helps anybody if they need it and stops you from blowing your stuff up. So,
all right, great.
So moving on, Velocidrone has a new patch that they've introduced, and that patch has added quite a few different things. I figure we could talk about a few of those things. It's a free patch, going to be much better for people who have the Freestyle pack. There's a lot of changes for the Freestyle pack. They're adding new quads. The AOS 5.5 is in there.
Nice.
A couple different. Yeah, they basically did a poll and then added all the ones people wanted. DJI FPV is coming up. It's not quite ready yet, but they're going to add the DJI FPV in there.
I mean, I don't know why you would want to fly the DJI FPV and Velocidrone. I guess if you have one and you want something that flies like it, you could use it. I'm rolling my eyes, but I don't.
JB, are you quad shaming?
The thing is, like, if you're going to fly in the simulator, why wouldn't you fly like a high-performance racing drone? But people who have the DJI FPV drone want to fly it, and they want to practice with something that flies like it. So I guess it makes sense. It's just Velocidrone is all about racing.
Yeah.
It's so weird.
Think about, you could do a DJI FPV spec race. Think about it. That might actually be fun, to be honest. I would fly that just to see, because everybody's on the same footing.
I'll tell you this, though. At least you can crash the DJI FPV drone in Velocidrone and not like immediately have to pay. Here, let's make the simulation complete. Okay. When you crash, they charge you $80 and you can't use it for 2 weeks while you send it off to virtual DJI care. Okay. Hey, I'd just like to point out that I was just shitting on DJI for a minute.
Remember.
I mean, I just like to everybody's like, JB is always shitting on Shark Byte and never DJI or vice versa. No, nobody ever notices when I shit on DJI. Just want to contribute to the narrative. Sorry, DJI. They said I couldn't say nice things about Shark Byte or they wouldn't pay me. But they forgot to mention that I'm still allowed to say bad things about them. Okay.
All right. So, other cool things that Velocidrone has added. Now, there's a weekly time trial. So, basically, every week you'll see a new time trial. It'll be up for 7 days. Everybody can compete on that. It's kind of a focused leaderboard grind. You'll get stuck in with a specific quad and settings and stuff. They've added a video camera slider on settings so that you can change like what cameras on your freestyle quad for weight. So you can kind of emulate different weights on the quad with a little change of the button. You can rate all the tracks in the game and sort tracks by ratings now. So it's kind of maybe easy.
I've always struggled with that. They have so many tracks.
Yes, official and non-official. So all the official ones will have ratings. You can pick ratings on them, and also the unofficials when you go to search for downloaded tracks. They've added a new scene for freestyle packs for the office park. A bunch of different cool things. One of the other really neat things I thought was neat is they've added flight paths. So basically now you'll see the racing line of the person you're against and also your line, and you can compare those racing lines to see who's doing better.
Nice. I think that's a really valuable tool, is to see your own racing line and to see other people's racing lines and sort of study them and see where to gain speed. Very, very valuable tool.
Pretty cool.
Talking about racing, One IFPV in the Discord just found out that DRL is pre-recorded and not live, and it says it's like the day he found out about Santa. Yeah, it takes them so long to record one of those shows. Like they're there until 3 a.m. or whatever, and then they cut it together. Like there's so much downtime in a quad race. Obviously, I guess not obviously, but. Yeah, no. And plus they're cutting together the GoPro footage. The pilots are seeing crappy FPV footage and they cut the GoPro together afterwards. Yeah. Welcome to the fold, One IFPV. I just thought that was funny. Not trying
Remy
to
Tim says, what about Santa?
Yeah, nothing. He lives in the North Pole and he makes presents for all the good boys and girls.
Yeah.
Shady, you can downgrade your HOTA. First of all, the HOTA and the Hobbymate D6 Duo are exactly the same in every way. They use the same firmware. They're completely interchangeable. So you can downgrade from 10.4.0 if you want to stop the constant fan. Yep. Okay. Next up, Blunty, people send us these videos and sometimes I think, it's kind of interesting. But I don't know if it's like for the news. Depends on whether we're having a light week or night. But this is high-speed flight in the wind.
Agile. And like most
I am
mobile
not
robots,
going to play the audio because I don't want to risk getting flagged. But this is from the IEEE, and the title of the video is "Learning High-Speed Flight in the Wild." And we got this linked in the show notes down below. This is a pilot flying, or is it? This is more computer-assisted autonomous flight. Let's see if we can fast forward a little bit.
If you go to like a minute in.
Look at this shit.
So this is the same group we've seen in a lot of these previous tests we've looked at. This is the University of Zurich. They're the ones who did the racing drones faster than a human that we looked at on a couple of the other projects, and they're using some of that same technology here to do this route planning, optimization, laser guidance, and this is all on the fly computation, as opposed to some of the previous stuff we looked at, which was pre-decision computation.
Right. Now, is this computation being done on the drone, or is it being done
my understanding is this is all on the drone with just like 2 cameras and a LiDAR, I think, something like that. I think it might be just 2 cameras.
What's the processor?
Stereo cameras.
Do we know what the processor is they're using?
So there's a paper linked down in the description of the YouTube video. I'm not sure offhand.
Wow. Sheesh. Like, that's pretty much what it looks like. Oh, here we go. Oh, over snow too. Nice. Okay, we're boned, Blunty, I think is the takeaway. Humans are boned.
It's only getting better, that's for sure.
I can't believe this is being done on a quadcopter with computational power available on board a quadcopter. I mean, obviously it's not like a Raspberry Pi, but God, maybe it is. I don't know. I see that thing flying through it's a stereo camera, no LiDAR, says John Goblin. Yeah. That's it. Just a stereo camera.
Buck wild.
Frick.
Yeah. What a world.
Yeah. Just,
that's going to chase you through the forest in about 30 years.
No, FAA, I wasn't flying over 250 grams. The killbots have been dispatched. I'll hide in the woods. Duh, we can fly through the woods.
Yeah.
It's crazy. It's crazy. Well, there you go. The paper is also linked, or not the paper, but the webpage is also linked down below. If you want to, if you're one of those people who likes to read. So, very cool.
Yeah, processing time is just crazy on this. They're measuring in milliseconds. It's like 10 milliseconds for their longest interface for their delay time and stuff, compared to a lot of the other previous attempts where 30 and 40 for the pre-processing on a computer. So they can do 10 off the computer, but they can do 38 milliseconds on board. So that's their processing delay, is 38 milliseconds with a 94% precision. So total processing latency on board is 41 milliseconds.
It does say that the training has challenges, or the quadcopter has challenges with dust, fog, and so forth. So we still, that's how we will escape the killbots, dust.
Yeah, anything it can't see through with a camera, I assume. So LiDAR maybe could see through, but a camera couldn't.
Yeah. Okay, good. We still have hope. We need to start.
So kick up the dust.
EMP. Yeah. It's crazy. That's freaking crazy. Okay. But they still can't freestyle like us humans, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Creativity.
Go rip that Bando drone.
Well, I got to tell you, Blunty, this autonomous racing drone flying through the woods is kind of creepy in a sort of existential, what's happening to the world way. But I think, that happens to everybody. As you get older, things change, new things come about that creep you out and make you feel worried and uncomfortable. On the other hand, there are things that just make me feel worried and uncomfortable because they're freaking weird. And this is one of those. Creepy new drone that walks and flies is a robo-apocalypse nightmare come true. This is a Gizmodo article.
Yeah, if you scroll down, there's a good video that kind of just goes through some different things.
No, I'm just going to watch this GIF again and again while this freaking stocky-legged thing of nightmares.
Well,
does that not make you uncomfortable?
Actually, to be honest, no. I thought it was pretty cool. I'm pretty on board with this.
Okay. All right, let's watch the video.
But basically, they talk a little bit about, is this the drone with legs, or is this like a legged walking bipedal drone with propellers? And they kind of use it between the two. Mm-hmm. So basically, they're calling it, the Leonardo, the legs on board drone. Mm-hmm. and they're saying that essentially it uses the propellers for balance, so it can walk better than a lot of.
That's so cool.
Yeah, it can walk better than a lot of things with similar leg structure, and then it can hop over things, it can go around things. But the other cool thing is it doesn't even have to move the legs, but it can use the legs for stability. So they show here like, oh, it's going to land on them and stuff, but then it's going to start doing stuff like tightrope walking, right? It can do by balancing, or skateboarding.
Stop! It's skateboarding. Stop!
Pretty cool. And then it can stand in wind, like it's bouncing against everything, you know.
I want him to here. Look, I'm okay with this. I think it's just the legs, the stocky, spindly legs creep me out. I think I want to see it with the plastic fairings on. It makes it feel more accessible. I don't know. That's so cool, though. You're right. That's so cool.
Maverick brings up a good point in the chat. What scares you more, this or people flying inverted pitch?
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, one is just objectively wrong. This is more subjective, I think.
It just feels wrong. This feels wrong.
This is such a cool approach. Like, if you look at what Boston Dynamics has done, they put so much R&D into making their robots be able to walk and so forth, jump, dance. And here Caltech has just said, you know what? Yeah, what if we just hovered? Oh, no, we're still going to give it legs. But instead of having these complicated, mechanics of structures and algorithms to help it stop falling over, it'll just sort of semi-fly. It'll be fine.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, somebody links a different version of an ATST. That makes a lot of sense. It does look like a lot like an ATST.
It does. That's why it's creeping me out. Maybe that's it. It's old Star Wars nightmares. Yeah. That's really cool. It's really cool.
So it's the way they get around, like, it looks pretty nimble, and that's because it's about 2.5 feet tall. It's only 5.5 pounds, 5.7 pounds. So super light little, workable drone. Not sure what they're going to do with it yet, but pretty cool.
Yeah. All right, Blunty, we got one more topic today. It's only we're only 3/4 of the way through the hour, so maybe we'll either finish early or we'll stretch out. But I think this is a really, really cool thing. You and I ran across this when we were doing the new product roundup. We looked at these new RCInPower motors. Hang on a second. Wait, no, don't. I've already ruined it. I kind of want to show this to the news and see if people can figure out what the F is going on here. So at first I thought this is an M3 motor shaft like Kebab is using. And you said it doesn't look like M3 to me.
Yeah, definitely. And then, we kind of looked into it a little more. And this motor, and then another motor we were looking at, the new GTS V3. Apparently, this is an M2 shaft. And then it's got these little nubbins for poking your T-mount into the little nubs to hold your T-mount. And then you can screw a nut onto the top.
Right. So this is a mount, they call it the M2 mount, and RCInPower has a bunch of motors they've put out with this mount. It's a way to mount T-mount props without having to do two separate M2 screws. Instead, you just set it on these little nubs and then just put an M2 nylock nut on top. That's so clever. So clever.
Yeah. So I will say, I think the one issue you're going to find is finding props that have the 2 millimeter in the center without drilling them out. So I did some research trying to look into props that fit on these, and unfortunately, most of the T-mounts are 1.5 millimeter instead of 2s.
Oh, I didn't even think about that.
There are some 2s, and there are drill kits for 2s, but yeah.
Well, the thing is, though, I guess that's still important. With the T-mount props, I guess the center shaft still helps stabilize the prop and hold it in place. If you were to over-drill it so it wasn't making contact with the shaft, that doesn't seem ideal.
I think the big thing to me, though, is the nut coming down. I feel like that's a big deal here, because it's like taking the whole T-mount assembly that would normally be, seemingly pretty bendable on each of those points, and then securing them down. So that hopefully you kind of secure that plastic to the top of the motor, and you can't flex and then break through the T-mount as easy, at least.
Yeah, my big question about this, like when I think about an like a 5 millimeter nylock nut, it's big. It's got a lot of surface area to make contact with the prop. And when you think about a T-mount, we've got those two M2s going into the hole, and there's two of them, and they kind of snug down. When I think about a little M2 nut coming down on top of the prop, that is not a lot of engagement. And I'm just not sure how durable it's going to be in terms of the prop staying on. Let's see. Mouse FPV in the chat says Bob rejected this design because, he's paraphrasing, it's ass. Bob went with an M3 prop, a shaft, which is a little bigger and has an M3 nut, which we're all very familiar with. Yeah. So very interesting, very clever. M2 T-mount props drive me crazy. I really dislike them, but for the weight, I guess. But I guess if it's hard to find props for this, then you're kind of out of luck.
Yep, for sure.
Because I'm sure as hell not drilling out all my props. That's not happening. So, yeah. Okay. Well, that is going to bring us to the end of the news. We have a little short tonight. We're going to be finishing up a little early. If you guys want to make sure we don't finish early next week, what should they do, Blunty?
Send an email over to news@fpvknowitall.com. Well, on the bottom, all the time, anytime you want to find it, if you forget it or need it. Yeah. And then also, if you're one of the people, make some news. Go make some news out there so we can talk about it.
There you go. We need a rant. Yeah, Patio Patterson in the chat says, if Bob rejected this design, which I don't know that for sure, but that's what Mouse FPV said. If Bob rejected this design and then went with 3mm with M3, which he did, then that's good enough for me. This is ass, and don't touch it. Bob does like M3. Oh, good. We have a super chat before we wrap up. FPV Darshian, I think that's how you say it. Thank you for $5 New Zealand dollars. He says, any tips for flying Spang style, props, techniques, etc.? What's the CLI command for enabling Farouk mode? People always ask this, Blunty, like, how do you fly like so-and-so? And to some degree, I mean, like, it's hard to, I think like the weight of the quad really matters. Maybe your rates matter. Mostly, though, I'm going to guess that you could hand Farouk almost any quad and he would fly it and it would look like Spang.
Yep. Get better. Practice more.
Get good.
That's the way to, yeah. Something, who's the other mode 3 guy like I am? Vic FPV.
Don't remind me, fly mode 3.
Mode 3's in the chat. All right. Vic FPV posted a video a while back about how to control prop wash. And his biggest thing in the prop wash video, other than like running like less pitchy props and stuff, was just to learn how to throttle the stick properly. So when you're coming around on your power loop, you need to control the throttle so you're pushing into the bottom of the loop and you're not getting the waffle from the prop wash. He's like, most tunes are never going to get this out. You have to learn to fly through this loop and then clean it up. So
Yep. I've noticed that when I fly different quads, like if you take me all the way down to a tiny whoop, then that's just so different that I don't fly the same. But when I fly a 3.5 inch or 3 inch or a 4 inch or a 5 inch or a 7 inch, I still look like me. You could show you the video and you go, oh, yeah, it looks like Bardwell. Part of that's because I'm still at my house, so that tips you off. But you watch pilots fly and they fly like themselves because what they do with their fingers is what they know how to do. And the quad matters some, but not as much as you would think. So if you want to learn to fly like Farouk, like you could try to find out if he flies with a 600 gram all up weight 5 inch, that absolutely is going to make it harder for you to do what he does if you're at 750. Okay. By the same token, you're going to have a hard time flying like Drew, who flies, or Bubby, who fly relatively heavy. I'm not sure the exact weight, but I think they're probably over 750, maybe up to 800 with a GoPro. If you're trying to do those long flowy lines of the 600 gram quad, it's not going to be exactly the same. But you should still be able, it's mostly just you. It's mostly just you.
Yeah,
So.
Dogtanian points out Farouk's rates are insane, so that's one other big thing is like if your rates are too low, there's just moves you're not going to be able to do. That's for sure true.
Yep.
So, but also if you turn up to crazy rates and you don't have practice with them, it also might be really hard.
Yeah.
So you might want to work your way up and start to learn and that stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, rates definitely are one part of the setup that does really matter. Because if you look at a pilot like Vanover, and I believe he freestyles at 700 degrees per second, and you see him doing these smooth, slow rolls, that's full stick. He's full stick there, right? That's all he's got to give. And that affects how he flies. By the same token, if you're trying to do like big snippy, snappy moves, you're going to need those rates to be able to do it.
Yeah. Lots of Mode 3s in the chat. Just want to shout that out. Lots of people apparently fly in Mode 3.
Pandering. They're pandering to you. That's what it's come to. You should feel, don't pander to him. He flies Mode 3. He should feel bad about it.
No. This can be the rant if we want to do a rant. I got a rant in me about modes, that's for sure. I think everyone who starts flying should try all 4 modes. That's my take. I did that. I picked Mode 3. I could fly immediately with Mode 3. It took me, I would just flip and hit the ground in Mode 2. So, would you rather start with the muscle memory?
You're supposed to suffer through that. That's look, let me make an analogy. When you start playing guitar, your fingers hurt and they bleed because you don't have calluses on your fingers. The metal strings dig into your fingers. And after a few weeks or months, you get calluses on your fingers and you can play. And you have to go through that. It's not supposed to be easy.
But let me ask you this. If you did work all day and you worked with your left hand and your left hand had more calluses and maybe it was easier to play with your left hand and it felt natural, maybe you would just do that. Right?
No.
So
let me ask,
anybody in the...
Go ahead.
Go ahead. I was just going to say, anybody in the chat who doesn't know what Mode 3 is, I think some people don't know what we're talking about. Mode 3 is where you move throttle to the right side. So basically you swap the sticks in Mode 2. It's throttle and yaw on the right side, and then it's pitch and roll on the left side.
So I go back to the musical instrument argument. I didn't pick a guitar just offhand. And Mouse FPV asks, should Hendrix have played right-handed? Jimi Hendrix, you kids may not know him. He's kind of a big deal. And he played left-handed guitars. And even worse, he didn't play left-handed guitars. He played right-handed guitars that he flipped over. So really screwy. But in a sense, that's better, and I'll tell you why. The argument I always make is, let's say you learn to play a guitar left-handed, okay? Now you can only play left-handed guitars. Which means that if you're at a party and there's a guitar sitting in the corner and somebody says, hey, you play guitar, play us a song. And you're like, finally, my moment. I get to play Wonderwall for a party full of drunk people. But you can't because it's not a left-handed guitar. Sorry, screw you. You can only play left-handed guitars now. And 98% or whatever of the guitars in the world are right-handed guitars. And so you've locked yourself out. I think that's less true for quads.
I'm sure Hendrix was a real bummer at parties because he couldn't play somebody else's guitar.
But no, what I was saying is he at least took a right-handed guitar and just flipped it over. So he still could play a right-handed guitar. He just played it different from everyone else. So, sure. I mean, Hendrix agrees with me. Hendrix would fly Mode 2. He would just flip the controller upside down.
No, Hendrix would fly Mode 4, right? That's what you're saying, because you don't have to move the throttle.
Yes, maybe. I'm not sure.
Right? Because you don't move the throttle, you change what they do. So he could fly the same controller, he just have to remap sticks or something.
Well, let me ask you, Blunty. Go ahead. You got.
Well, a couple of people are confused. Mode 1 is throttle and roll on the right stick.
I'm going to bring up a graphic. You go ahead with your point.
Mode 3 is throttle and yaw. So, but my point is just that, should you give up muscle memory? It's more important to me than to be able to fly somebody's quad or hang out with people than it is to have years of muscle memory that I clearly have because I was able to start and fly Mode 3 around a track immediately.
Well, what gave you that muscle memory?
I'm pretty sure video games, but I don't know. I just know that I was immediately able to fly, so I have to have muscle memory from somewhere. It's not magic. So if one mode is better for people, then it seems to me that people should try those 4 modes, see which mode is better, and then make their own decisions based on how they can fly.
I can't find one right off with mode 4, but here's modes 1, 2, and 3. And that's the thing. Mode 3 corresponds to the way that the sticks on an Xbox controller or whatever PlayStation controller work in a first-person shooter, right? Is that right?
Well, I don't think so.
No,
To me,
no, it's not. That's not right.
Yeah, to me, I think more of like battlefield helicopter controls. That's like where my head goes. Because I remember, using a right-hand stick for throttle on a battlefield helicopter.
Okay.
I don't know. Yeah, to me, like, I would just try them all. That's the whole point. If you have muscle memory for mode 2, or if you feel like you're better at one or the other, then just give them all a shot. It only takes a quick throttle swap. You learn to swap a throttle. It's something you can do. It takes a few minutes. And then you map them the other way and go the other way.
My argument is that you're going to go through a few weeks of struggle as you learn to fly and you build that muscle memory, and that there is a lot of value in using the most common control scheme. But I think it's less true like with quads than maybe with guitars, because most of the time you fly your own quad. You're probably not going to show up. You might show up somewhere and there's like a guitar, but you're probably not going to just show up somewhere and they're going to be like, hey, you fly quads. Do you want to fly mine? But what if they do? Like, how have you dealt with situations where you have you ever been handed a controller and you're like, sorry, I can't fly this until we swap the throttle?
Yep.
And what do you do?
I just didn't fly it.
Yeah. I mean, do you feel like you're missing out?
Not really. I still hung out while other people flew and we had a chat and it was all good. I don't know. For me, it wasn't a big deal. Like, I would prefer not to worry about it, but I'm not like a super hardcore social person either. So like maybe if you're like always with friends and you're always flying other people's stuff or taking a radio or want to test some stuff, then maybe it's going to be different for you for sure. But like, I'll just say one other thing is, Pacific Northwest Pilot's in the chat. He's been in my live streams that I've been doing. And he's told me that he switched after 3 years of flying mode 2. He tried mode 3 out. And he can fly better on mode 3 now after a few days of practice than he could from years of flying on mode 2.
Well, that certainly is supporting the argument that some people find much more affinity for some modes, flight controller layouts than others. I guess my thing is that, like, I get emails from people and they say, I assume that I need to use mode 4, I guess it must be, because that's how a first-person shooter maps, roughly. And I'm like, maybe, but maybe not. Don't assume. I guess I could come around to saying try them all. And if one is much easier or much more natural for you, maybe go with it. But boy, you know.
I mean, for me, it was like I said, immediately mode 3, like I could get around a track. Like I was practicing in DRL, was the first thing I ever tried on the sim. And I got my QX7 and I tried all the modes. And yeah, I was like smashing in the ground. Like you talk about, like a lot of people do, you just hit the ground over and over until you figure out how to fly. But I found that when I switched to mode 3, suddenly I could just fly. And there had to be muscle memory from somewhere, it was like a little janky, but I got around a track without crashing. So
interesting.
Anyway, food for thought.
Well, there you go. All right. Well, we came up with a little rant to fill out time, and now we are going to wrap up. Thank you guys so much for coming out and hanging out with us every Tuesday at 6 p.m. Eastern. Daylight saving is coming soon, isn't it, Blunty?
Yes.
So one of these weeks, you're going to be saying, hey, did you change the time? And I'll be saying, no, the time changed you. Oh. But keep an eye out for that going on. Pay attention. Subscribe.
Yeah, so we are at the same clock time, but that might change based on daylight saving.
Yep, especially if you're in Europe or something and the dates don't move at the same time. That's going to do it, folks. Happy flying, everybody. See you next week, Blunty.
Take it easy.